Take a look at this boiling soup made from simulated lunar regolith. What you're seeing here is a so-called MRI reactor, which turns lunar dust into oxygen, silicon, and metals, as if it were an all-you-can-eat buffet for future moon bases. Today, we're reviewing Blue Origin's latest advancements. Blue Alchemist has passed the critical design review, and New Glenn is getting closer to its next flight. Since our last update, Blue Origin has not only been working on the hardware, but also on the vision of how we can stay on the moon permanently. Buckle up! This is going to be a journey through the electrolysis of molten regolith, or molten regolith electrolysis. Billion-dollar rockets, and the question of whether Jeff Bezos is really bringing us closer to the stars. My name is Serwan, and this is Mars Chronicles. Let's take off! For all of you who are new here, Blue Origin, founded by Jeff Bezos, is the quiet giant of space travel. A few days ago, they celebrated their 25th anniversary. I'll leave it up to you in the comments to decide what that means. While SpaceX dominates the headlines with Starship, Blue Origin is working behind the scenes on technologies that could make the difference between a brief visit to the moon and a permanent presence. Their new bull is a 98-meter rocket which is supposed to fly again soon. And Blue Alchemist, that's their answer to the question of how we can extract oxygen, energy, and building materials from the moon itself. Since September 2024, Blue Origin has achieved milestones that bring us closer to this dream. Let's take a closer look at that. Let's discuss Blue Alchemist. The critical design review in December 2025 was not a small step, but a leap. What does that mean? Imagine you're building a house. The critical design review is the moment when you say, yes, the plans work and we can start building. Blue Alchemist is a scalable system that transforms lunar regolith, that is, the dust and rocks lying all over the moon, into oxygen, silicon, metals, and even solar cells. Why is that important? Because if we want to stay on the moon, we won't be able to send a freighter full of materials from Earth every time. Instead, we tap into local resources, like pioneers who cut wood from the forest. The MRI reactor you see in the video is the key. It melts regolith at over 1,600 Celsius, lets oxygen bubbles rise, and separates the metals and even semiconductors. That means in the future you could even manufacture microchips on the moon and Mars. This isn't sci-fi, this is now. It's scheduled to be tested autonomously on the moon around 2026. But how does it actually work? Take the MRI process. The reactor heats regolith into a molten mass, runs electricity through it, and voila. Oxygen escapes as a gas, while silicon and metals like iron and aluminum are left behind. The chemical reaction is fascinating. Iron oxide plus energy yields iron and oxygen. That's not only efficient, it's sustainable. Blue Origin's lab in Kent, Washington has accumulated over 1,000 hours of test time since 2023, and in August 2025 they achieved continuous operation for 24 hours. A record that shows the reactor works in the long term. And you know what the best part is? The oxygen can be used not only for breathing but also as rocket fuel. Imagine landing on the moon, refueling your Blue Moon Mark II, and flying on without bringing a single drop from Earth. By the way, not a single drop. According to the latest reports, Blue Origin has managed to optimize their ground facilities to the point where they have 100% control over their cryogenic propellants. That means none of it evaporates. Zero boil-off is the key term. That's incredible for the future on the moon and Mars, but it's even more important for trips to Mars, because if your fuel slowly evaporates in the tanks, there won't be much left after a 6 to 9 month flyby. That means SpaceX also has to reach this level of fuel handling maturity. Now to New Glenn, since our last video in March 2025. Blue Origin has not only tested the rocket, but also prepared it for the next mission. New Glenn, with its 7 BE-4 engines and a payload capacity of 45 tons to low Earth orbit, is scheduled for the fourth quarter of 2025. This time with the Escapade mission for NASA Escapade. Escape and Plasma Acceleration and Dynamics Explorers is a pair of satellites designed to study the Martian magnetosphere. New Glenn will deploy the two spacecraft on a direct interplanetary trajectory. This is part of NASA's low-cost simplex program. And do you know what's special about it? NASA is paying Blue Origin only about $20 million for this, a fraction of the usual launch costs. Why is it so cheap? Because Escapade is a relatively small project with a payload of less than a ton. And because Blue Origin is using the mission as the second national security space launch demonstration to certify New Glenn. It's like a test run that delivers science while not putting too much strain on Blue Origin's finances. The low cost of $20 million for the Escapade mission is an indication of how NASA works with its simplex program. Small, fast and inexpensive, although when it comes to fast, we might have to turn a blind eye here and there. Simplex stands for Small, Innovative Missions for Planetary Exploration. And the goal is to conduct science with limited resources. For Blue Origin, it's a win-win situation. They get the chance to test New Glenn without having to charge full market prices. And NASA saves money that they would otherwise spend on expensive launches. But let's be honest, we're running late. Actually, Escapade was supposed to launch in October 2024, just in time for an optimal Mars transfer window. That would have been ideal because it allows for an optimal transfer with minimal fuel consumption. Instead, the launch slips into the fourth quarter of 2025. So we're almost a year late. That means the satellites have to take a less efficient route, which requires more delta V and therefore more fuel. Why is that problematic? Every extra drop of fuel increases mission costs and could also shorten satellite lifespans. That also means that the planned landing on the second attempt becomes more difficult if the booster uses more fuel during launch. However, that shouldn't be a problem with the heavy lift monster New Glenn and the relatively small payload, since here foreigners. The first flight in January 2025 was a complete success. The second stage reached orbit and the booster was lost during re-entry. But no one had expected the landing to succeed on the first attempt. Since then, Origin has upgraded the engines, reinforced the heat shield, and improved the autonomy of the second stage. The next mission is crucial. It will deliver the payload and gather data for the manned Blue Moon mission set for early 2026. And do you know who is coming along? An experiment by Honeybee Robotics, a Blue Origin subsidiary which samples lunar dust. A first step to prepare Blue Alchemist. By the way, just to briefly stay with the Blue Moon lander. Blue Origin released this video at the end of September, showing a test of their sun shield for their lunar lander. This shield will protect the lunar transporter and the lander from radiation in space. But back to Escapade for a moment. This is a very fascinating project that will allow us to take a deeper look into the Martian magnetosphere. The two satellites, Escape and Plasma, will study Mars' response to the solar wind, how particles flow, how energy is transported, and how this affects the atmosphere. This isn't small talk. This is the basis for understanding why Mars has such a thin atmosphere today, and how similar processes might occur on other planets. There's a planet that's of particular interest to us humans. You might know it by the name Earth. Blue Origin is not SpaceX. These two companies couldn't approach their projects more differently. SpaceX's philosophy is move fast and break things, meaning work quickly and break things. And Blue Origin's motto is gradatim ferociter, which means step by step but with determination. Back to Blue Alchemist. The technology is intended not only for the Moon, but also for Mars missions. Since our last video, Blue Origin has expanded partnerships with NASA and European Space Agency. In May 2025, they signed a $150 million contract to develop in-situ resource utilization. And in July, a memorandum of understanding was signed with European Space Agency to integrate Blue Alchemist into European lunar missions and to use Blue Origin's space station orbital reef. That's no coincidence. European Space Agency is planning a mission to the South Pole in 2028, where water resources are suspected, and Blue Alchemist could provide oxygen and metals there. And do you know what that means? If Blue Origin succeeds, we could have a permanent, self-sustaining moon base by 2030. A stepping stone for Mars, but many hurdles remain. The MRI reactor has to operate autonomously at -170 Celsius and during dust storms on Mars. The energy requirement for a reactor that melts rock is certainly not low. Blue Origin's Ex-Post from the 10th October 2025 shows a test in a simulated lunar environment where the reactor lasted for 24 hours. Impressive, but still not enough for permanent operations. By the way, if you want to get news like this and other space updates directly in your inbox, sign up for the brand new Mars Chronicles newsletter for free at Mars Chronicles Space. The link is below in the description. In summary, Blue Origin shows that the path to the moon is made up of small steps, from MRI reactors that bubble oxygen to Nucleon conquering the skies. Since September 2024, they have not only made plans but also delivered hardware. Blue Alchemist is ready for 2026, and Nucleon could soon be supplying the moon. For us Mars dreamers, this is the moment when the dream of a permanent presence becomes tangible. Are you as excited as I am? Write your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this update on Blue Origin, subscribe to Mars Chronicles and leave a thumbs up. A huge thank you goes out to all channel members and Patreon supporters. If you also want early access to our videos, you can find all the information in the video description. My name is Serwan and this was Mars Chronicles. Thank you for tuning in. Pera Spera ad Astra.